Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push 1. All right, I got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 446. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, hit that notification bell so you get all of the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Document and description beneath the video for you to follow along with. Link in the chat if you want to engage in the discussion. Click on the link, raise your hand, and one of us will acknowledge you to advance you to the panel. Tonight is Black Blockchain Talk, the Global Industry 4.0 Industrialization Report for 2019 to 2024 and its impact on the community. So let me make some adjustments here on the title. All right, we got 11 people watching and only 5 likes. We'll get started when I see 11 likes. And let me start now acknowledging people in the chat. Excalibur, salute. Black Scorpion, what's up? Engineering Cannabis, Hotep. Rain and Woman, good evening to you. Wealth for Purpose, good evening to you as well. Terrence Forrest Jr., what's going on? Black Scorpion, what's up? All right, we'll get started when the likes match the viewership. Albert Bird, yo, what's going on with you? All right, let me Dave Tao, what's going on? All right, let me get started because I don't want to waste any more time. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about Global Industry 4.0 report. We got some other things on the docket that I want to actually get to as well. And I think it's important. We've had these discussions many times before, but the thing is, we haven't had it in a whole lot of detail. We've had some high level discussion, but not deep dives as to how this pertains to Black people in America and the West. And so that's what tonight's going to focus on. So let me get started with the first item on the docket. All right, so first item on the docket is from Coinformania. So this is just a flyer, BlockSec Conference 2020, Exploring Blockchain Technology and Cybersecurity, September 17th in Atlanta. So you want to make sure you get to these if you are about blockchain and cybersecurity. This will be up your alley. I will be down there as well, so I will be attending that as well. So if anybody wants to get together and have a have chit chat post conference, we can definitely do that. So September 17th, Atlanta, BlockSec Conference 2020. BlockSec Conference organizes the premier Web 3.0 cybersecurity event in the Northern Hemisphere on September 16th to the 17th, 2020 at the Westin Peachtree Plaza Hotel, Atlanta, Georgia, where we explore consumer and enterprise blockchain and cybersecurity solutions in depth. This two-day experience brings together professionals and businesses redefining the global cybersecurity industry, particularly in blockchain biometrics and artificial intelligence, or better known as Web 3.0. Starting with an opening ceremony in the heart of Atlanta, the conference takes place in the 4-star Westin Peachtree Plaza. We are shining a light on this emerging industry while taking a unique and widening perspective on the impact of this fourth industrial revolution on our digital security. So this is going to be popping from what it sounds like. I definitely want to get down there. I hope I have some space on my calendar for that, some bandwidth. So this is in the description beneath the video for you to book and register yourself for this event. I definitely will be attending if I have space on my calendar. So all right, let me get to this next item as well. All right, share my screen. All right, this other one is actually Black Wealth and Blockchain 2020. So this is another blockchain event happening next month in February in Atlanta. So this is Black Wealth and Blockchain 2020, the business of blockchain. So this is going to be popping down there as well. Make sure you all sign up for this if you are in the Atlanta area. You got to support Black people in blockchain development. So I'll make sure I drop this in the chat and also put it inside the chat, in the chat box as well. Did you know blockchain is expected to be a $3.1 trillion industry in the next few years, and non-tech professionals, including writers, educators, human resource professionals, lawyers, project managers, and others are going to make billions from this technology. It's time for us to get a piece of the pie. Come to Black Wealth Plus Blockchain Conference 2020 to learn what blockchain is and how you can benefit from this technology. So they're talking the stuff that we talk. I can't see anything wrong with that. All right, so that's that. Let me get to the next item on the docket. All right, this one is from the World Economic Forum.org. Bend, don't break, how to thrive in the fourth industrial revolution. Expand this out. The move fast and break things ethos that optimized Silicon Valley business culture for much of the 21st century's first decade has fundamentally changed the global economy. For evidence of this, look no further than the French startup Guppy, which was launched in late 2018 to dredge discarded electric rental scooters out of the river Seine. In just one day, this past summer, Guppy workers fished more than 50 shared mobility devices out of the river. Now Paris is regulating its scooter fleet. Guppy's story is an allegory for modern day businesses operating in a world in which it seems all of the old rules are meant to be broken. A new generation of businesses has upended entire industries by removing middlemen, flouting conventional processes, and leveraging connectivity and automation in ways that have forced incumbent businesses, leaders, regulators, and the global workforce to rethink everything they once believed to be sacred. But the changes have not come without consequences. Many of the companies that pioneered the go-go tech culture that produced these breakthroughs are now the poster children behind calls for increased regulation, and in some cases have caused significant collateral damage. The World Economic Forum has dubbed this unique period in the evolution of business the fourth industrial revolution, a moment in time when increased automation, artificial intelligence, and continued technological disruption will fundamentally change the way we live, work, and relate to one another. Accordingly, just as we have seen with previous business revolutions, there will be many intended and unintended consequences that come with each step forward on this journey. The challenge, of course, for those of us living, working, and forging a path through this period of radical change is how to stay on the right side of history when the rules of engagement are changing so rapidly. A great example of this very real world challenge is playing out on the global stage in the area of digital taxation. France has introduced a new digital tax this past July, which applies a 3% levy on revenues from digital services earned in France by companies with more than 25 million euros or $28 million US in French revenue, and 750 million euros or $838 million worldwide. In introducing the new law, France has joined a group of 20 countries throughout Europe, including Austria, Belgium, and Czech Republic, Italy, Spain, and the UK, that have either announced or published proposals to introduce digital services taxes. Now, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, has gotten in on the act with a new proposal to create an international framework to guide how and where these digital taxes should be implemented. From a purely economic standpoint, there is some logic to these tax proposals, as ever larger portions of our collective consumption are transmitted digitally. The idea of taxing these transactions based on the location in which they are consumed rather than the location where they originate is fairly logical. In practice, however, the idea of dozens of different nations enacting their own tax laws to capture revenue from multinational tech companies with locations all over the world is a recipe for massive conflict. As a case in point, the Trump administration responded to France's digital tax with the threat of a 100% tariff on French champagne, cheese, and other goods. The global trade standoff was eventually averted, but the uncertainty still lingers for multinational technology companies who have been left juggling a global patchwork of new digital tax laws, potential government standoffs over said tax laws, and the constant need to project future growth accurately while all the inputs keep changing. And that's just one line item on the tax ledger. Add the barrage of new regulatory requirements coming from all corners, the constant development of new technologies, and the mounting speed for new skill sets to manage it all, and the scale of the challenge starts to become clearer. We've been on the front lines of this revolution at Thomson Reuters. Our core client base of tax and accounting and legal professionals have seen their industries fundamentally disrupted by new technology and rapid fire regulatory change. For some, the process has been painful. For others, it has created huge opportunities. The difference between the two: agility. In the field of law, for example, where the billable hour has been under pressure for decades, and a steadily growing crop of alternative legal service providers has entered the marketplace and made a considerable dent in the revenue streams of the establishment. The leading firms have been largely unaffected by the changes because they have evolved their businesses. That process includes everything from adopting the latest AI tools, artificial intelligence, to make the legal research and discovery process more efficient, to offering specialized services to help clients manage the crush of new regulatory requirements they all face. Across countless examples, the one universal truth we continually see proven as we march through the early days of the fourth industrial revolution is that startups and incumbents who have the agility to seize new technologies and scale rapidly to adopt new ways of doing things are the ones who thrive, no matter what comes around the corner. Ultimately, the secret to thriving in the environment in which everyone appears to be moving fast and breaking things is not to break at all, but to stay flexible enough to bend when the rules of the game keep changing. So what's happening here and that they're talking about is any legacy company has to be able to have this ability and of agility to adapt every single time some form of new technology emerges. And so in the fourth industrial revolution, which is based on cyber connected systems of industrialized society, your business needs to be able to interact with this new sort of emerging tech. So it doesn't matter if you're a hot dog stand or a food truck or a bodega or a barber or a beautician salon. You need to be able to interact with these new systems that's coming online. So for example, a food truck, typically it's basically a human-to-human interaction. But what they have done with these food trucks is that they have created apps for them so that one, you know the GPS location of where the truck is going to be, and two, you can pay for your food ahead of time. You can order your food ahead of time, and then three, pay for your food with no physical cash being exchanged. And so you go to this food truck, you order your food ahead of time, and the food is already waiting for you. So you're cutting the line. Traditionally, people would have waited in line, and especially in the summertime, they have waited, for maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. But now with the technology, the emerging tech that has allowed people to have this new form of instant gratification where you whip out your phone or your smartwatch, and now you have access to multiple food resources just because you spoke about some food. You spoke about a hot dog. You spoke about orange chicken or something like that. And what happens here is the app will find one of these food trucks close in vicinity to you or within your radius. This is the way the industry is moving. We're not sitting around waiting for analog legacy businesses to play catch up. Your business needs to be able to interact because that's the way the culture is moving, because the industry is moving that way. Same thing with barbers. I know some barbers where you can't just walk in anymore. You got to book an appointment, and they only accept Cash App for right now, or that's the fastest mode of payment for them. Okay, so you can't just walk into a barbershop, a crowded barbershop, and be like, "How many heads you got?" No, you're gonna have to hit that calendar and see which barber is available. That's the way industry is moving, breakneck speed. We have Nicole 11 on the panel. What's going on, man?
What's going on, bro? And I'm checking you out, man. Keep banging. I'm gonna pop in a second. I'm just gonna listen up and I'm gonna contribute, man. But keep banging, Mike. Keep kicking it.
All right. Yeah. So that's the way this is working, and that's why they're having this discussion on the World Economic Forum. How to thrive in the fourth industrial revolution. That's how you thrive. Your business needs to be able to interact with emerging tech. I don't care if you own a dry cleaners. That's actually a perfect example. You need to know the process, or not need to know, but the process of how you would dry clean your clothes. Imagine that you whip out your phone, you take a picture potentially of the items, the garments that you have that you need to be dry cleaned. You upload it through the app to the dry cleaner. The dry cleaner comes and picks up your garments and takes them, and you get an alert on your phone when your garments are ready to be picked up or to be delivered. And in this case, they may deliver it for you based on whatever time you set available, that I'm going to be available after 5 o'clock because I get off at 4:30. And so somebody's going to be there, or the dry cleaning, delivery driver is going to be in that area and drop off your garments to you at 5 o'clock because you scheduled it for that time. And that's how this is going to work. And you're going to put your payments is going to be automatically deducted, whether you have a Cash App or PayPal or something like that, or even something like a cryptocurrency, some tokenization. Some of these businesses will start accepting Ethereum, Ether coins or something like that, or even something like a Litecoin. Because as cryptocurrency start to become more mature in the next year and a year and a half, you're going to start to see a lot of these old coins start to shake off, and the tangible coins actually, the stable coins actually start to take precedence. So that's the way your traditional legacy businesses in the Black community are going to have to learn how to operate. All right, let me get to the next item on the docket. Okay. All right, this one is from globalnewswire.com. Global Industry 4.0 Transformation Industry Report 2019 to 2024. Coverage on 5G, AI, big data analytics, blockchain, cloud and edge computing, cybersecurity, immersive technology, IoT, and robotics. This should be interesting. All right, let's bring this on. The internet revolution has already redefined business to consumer industries such as media, retail, and financial services. In the next 10 years, the digital transformation initiatives will radically alter manufacturing, energy, agriculture, transportation, and other industrial sectors of the economy, which together account for nearly 2/3 of the global gross domestic product. Initially, focus on improving existing processes and augmenting current infrastructure, the convergence of certain technologies will evolve to encompass next generation methods and procedures such as teleoperation, operation of machine at a distance, telerobotics, and other areas that rely upon interface and control of real objects by virtual objects. Industry 4.0, also known as Industry 4.0, represents the fourth industrial revolution. It is a term that represents a number of automation, data exchange, and manufacturing technologies. Industry 4.0 initiatives are driving massive change across a wider number of industry verticals with an emphasis on improving processes, resource utilization, and productivity. The manufacturing industry in particular is rapidly transforming as technology competition and the evolving demands of global consumers dictate the need for continuously improving efficiencies and flexibility. The manufacturing industry is rapidly transforming from just-in-time build to just-in-time data to determine production needs in real time. While there are many technologies involved in the transformation, there are a few that are especially important to the industry, including 5G, artificial intelligence, big data analytics, blockchain, cloud, and edge computing, cybersecurity, immersive technology, such as virtual reality, Internet of Things, IoT, and robotics. This research provides substantial qualitative and quantitative analysis for each of these technologies, as well as solutions, applications, services, as well as major players, strategies, and offerings as follows. 5G. This research evaluates cellular broadband applications and services, including revenue and usage, subscribers and users by LTE, LTE Advanced Pro, and 5G. The report also addresses LTE and 5G and private wireless networks, as well as market opportunities for mobile edge computing, MEC, in public and private networks, including the market for computing as a service. The report includes 5G application market sizing as well as LTE apps and services in terms of penetration and revenue through 2024. So what they're talking about is 5G is just a piece of infrastructure, but it's also an enabler for rapid speed at pace. So wire speeds over the air. So now you don't have to wait for a video to queue up. It's going to queue up instantly from a streaming standpoint. Same thing for autonomous vehicles and micro transportation and drone technology, UAVs, and things of that nature. All of these sort of endpoint devices are going to have to connect to something fast, but it's also going to need to process it in real time. And this is where 5G applications that connect to the edge is going to matter. Artificial intelligence. This research also evaluates various AI technologies and their use relative to the analytic solutions with the rapidly growing enterprise and industrial data arena. The report assesses emerging business models, leading companies, and solutions. The report also analyzes how different forms of AI may be the best used for problem solving. The report also evaluates the market for AI and IoT networks and systems. The report provides forecasting for unit growth and revenue for both analytics and IoT from 2019 to 2024. So artificial intelligence, relatively new sort of term, but we talked about it many times on here before, but how artificial intelligence is going to be leveraged as a enabler for human-like systems, right? So you're going to use AI to sift through all of this data that gets collected. A lot of this data that gets collected at what we call the edge, right? Outside of the cloud at the perimeter, closest to where the devices actually interact. So autonomous vehicles, drones, IoT, microtransportation, all of these sort of millions of devices in areas or cities and whatnot that are going to connect to the system are going to connect to the edge, which is outside of the cloud, but closer to the 5G tower. And it's going to happen. All the processing for is going to take place there, but it's going to be utilizing AI. So it's going to be a faster turnaround. So now you don't have to wait for a human to actually sift through this data and make assumptions or actually try to curate data models. And it's going to do it automatically with artificial intelligence. That's the whole purpose of AI. Big data analytics. The research also provides an in-depth assessment of the global big data market, including business case issues, analysis, application use cases, vendor landscape, value chain analysis, and a quantitative assessment of the industry with forecasting from 2019 to 2024. It also evaluates the big components of big data infrastructure and security framework. So again, they're talking about all of this data that's going to be generated by all of these endpoints, all of these drones and AI, autonomous vehicles, microtransportation, smartwatches, smartphones, smart tablets, and things of that nature. Gaming is going to develop a lot of data. It's going to generate a whole lot of data. Purchasing, querying on Google and other search engines, such as Bing and whatnot. All of these things are going to generate lots of data, and big data analytics is going to be important. That's why we talk about on Black Tech Talk the need to understand big data. That's why we had a discussion last week about becoming a database administrator, because that's the beginning point of big data analytics. The ability to actually build up or have literacy and build up infrastructure such as servers and containers and Docker images and whatnot, and spin up these sort of services in the cloud so that you can actually process a lot of this data. All right. Blockchain. The research also examines the technology leading companies and solutions in the evolving blockchain ecosystem. It evaluates current and anticipated use cases for blockchain and assesses the market potential globally, regionally, and segmented by deployment type and industry vertical for the period 2019 to 2024. The report evaluates key players, solutions, and use cases. It also assesses the prospect of integrating blockchain with other technologies, including IoT and artificial intelligence. We just got finished talking about that. It includes detailed forecasts by use case, application, and industry verticals from 2019 to 2024. So we talk about 2020 being that breakout year for blockchain. We covered a article a few weeks ago, maybe at the turn of the month, that said top 10 skill sets in that's going to be necessary on LinkedIn. According to LinkedIn, blockchain was in the top 5. In fact, blockchain was in the top 3. It's 2020 now. This report is going to collect data in as a report, the usage to 2024. So 2024 is that year that you better have some form of deep understanding, if not a form of literacy of these emerging technologies for the fourth industrial revolution, to actually be a part of it so that you don't get left behind. So that's what they're talking about here. All right, cloud and edge computing. This research also evaluates the telecom and IT ecosystem in support of mobile edge computing, including communication and computing infrastructure providers, managed service vendors, carriers, and OTT providers. It includes a focus on company strategies and offerings relative to the current and anticipated future market needs. It also provides a quantitative analysis of the mobile edge computing market, including segmentation by industry, vertical, region of the world, application, and services. It also provides forecasts for MEC-based streaming data and real-time data analytics through 2024. So again, cloud, edge computing, just talked about edge computing. So edge is that layer of computing, that computing layer that happens outside of the cloud. So this is what's going to happen, on your telephone pole. You're going to see these boxes on telephone poles with these sort of small computers in there that's going to process all of this information at, real close to the street or real close to the environment where the activity is happening. They're not going to ship it all the way up to AWS. They're not going to ship it to Azure. They're going to handle it right then and there as close as they can. This is going to be a huge market for computing, because whoever has the fastest edge appliance is going to be the one to win out. And so you're starting to see right now, edge computing is at the same level or the same place now where Netscape was in 1995, 1996. But it's going to change by 2024. You're going to see explosion of maturation for edge computing. So cloud is good now, but edge computing is going to explode next year. That's what this report is talking about. So immersive technology, this research also includes an in-depth assessment of the virtual reality market, including analysis of VR ecosystem and role of value chain partners, evaluation of recent VR patent filings and intellectual property, and analysis of current price metrics, VR devices, apps, and content. The report also provides an assessment of key VR companies and solutions with SWOT analysis, analysis of emerging business models, a evolution of VR monetization, analysis of VR component market, devices, software, hardware, platforms. The report also presents key VR growth drivers, market challenges, and emerging opportunities. So VR, Facebook, Oculus, HTC's Vive, and some of these new Microsoft HoloLens, and some of these new technologies that's going to be coming out 2020, there's going to be a huge market for this, especially the NFL. You imagine if players could wear quarterbacks can wear a camera embedded inside the top of their helmet, and you can see downfield what the quarterback is seeing. So you can see Brady scramble so he doesn't get sacked in your face inside of a VR headset. You can see him pitch it downfield, all in real time. This can take place only with these emerging techs, this edge computing, 5G, blockchain, artificial intelligence, so on and so forth, right? You can't do that without this sort of technology, and that's where this is all coming in at. And so it's going to be very profitable to actually come up with the applications that can work in this. Same thing in hockey. Hockey is a dying sport, but with immersive technology like virtual reality headsets, imagine if you can see in high definition in 4K hockey players from a player's perspective. If there's a webcam, a micro camera inside their helmet, 13 megapixels, 20 megapixels, 40 megapixels, and you're getting all this visuals in real time. They slap the puck down the ice and go past the goalie, or the sort of crashing against the glass and so forth. That stuff is going to be very profitable because people want to see that. That's the way they want to see it.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir. What's going on?
Hey, in terms of blockchain and all that, the technology is basically going to increase. It's going to basically affect everything.
Mm-hmm.
And one part I was looking at, basically, I've been trying to write a project, is security, especially cannabis security. Mm-hmm. And basically, in the arena of security, what drives security right now is basically fear. But what if what will drive technology for security is real time data, where your security is basically controlled by what's going on real time. If there's a robbery, your whole security system changes in terms of how everything, in terms of your manpower, maybe you're using drones, or everything basically changes by what's going on in real time. So IoT will be implemented, AI, machine learning, basically taking data and basically at that time using the data, incoming data, and making analysis, basically using machine learning to basically make changes on those security in your system. Mm-hmm. So the implementation of basically IoT, blockchain, and machine learning would basically be big in basically security and other aspects too.
Indeed. All right, let me get to this next one. Industrial Internet of Things. This research also evaluates IIoT technologies, companies, applications, services, and solutions. Report forecasts include overall global and regional IIoT outlook, as well as IIoT by industry vertical, software, hardware, and services for the period 2019 to 2024. So industrial Internet of Things means, energy facilities such as your, Con Ed and so on and so forth. FPL, I think, Florida Gas and Lighting, I think that's the name of the utility company down in Florida. All of those sort of nuclear power plants and solar power plants, renewable energy plants, and things of that nature, manufacturing facilities, Ford, GM, Chrysler, they will have some form of industrial Internet of Things devices inside their environment. Cobots, robots, lighting, HVAC technology, all of that stuff is going to be put on a single system. And for the most part, a lot of those mechanized devices that I mentioned already operate on a network, but they do not talk to each other, right? So there's no way for the cobots and robots and other operational devices on the floor to know what the temperature is within the environment itself. So whether or not it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too warm, they don't know, because those systems don't talk to each other. They're all proprietary. But now with IIoT and some of the new IIoT management interfaces and applications, that's going to allow those systems to talk to each other in real time. So in hospitals, that's also a big issue too, right? Because you have Philips, Siemens, GE Health, many of these other device manufacturers, even Apple for that matter. Those devices are proprietary in the hospital, so they don't even talk to each other. And so there's no real way to actually make them function until you create some form of open source governance plane that or a governance layer that allows all devices to talk on one standard. They're all pretty much individualized, and that's a problem. So that rugged individualism in technology is going to be broken down for the foreseeable future. People are going to have to come up with not people, but consortiums are going to have to come up with a new standard to allow these systems to talk to each other. And the last is robotics. This research evaluates the global and regional robotics marketplace, including the technologies, companies, and solutions for robots in the industrial, enterprise, military, and consumer segments. The report includes detailed forecasts for robotics by robot type, components, capabilities, solutions, and connectivity. So we talked about robotics many times on here. Whether it's a drone or a UAV or unmanned ground vehicle, things of that nature. We covered an article some months ago where they had a trash can that was automated. It would take itself to the curb on trash day, and then it will park itself back when it's empty after the trash people leave it. That level of robotics is coming. So if you are a bum man living on some woman's couch, your days are going to be numbered very soon. All right. These are just a list of the companies mentioned. I'm not going to mention any of them because we don't get paid to promote them, but the report will come back in 2024. But this is what they're talking about in terms of between 2019 and 2024. So you're going to have to keep up with these sort of emerging tech and pick which one works best for you. Some of you networking guys are going to have to start learning 5G. 5G isn't just some, new spec, sort of a cellular system. It's actually going to be a part of rapid deployment, because 5G is not like 4G where you can just have one big tower in certain areas and then call it a day. No, they're bringing the low speed, I shouldn't say low speed, the sub-speed last mile 5G at 600 megahertz to urban environments, to outside urban environments where you have areas that have these gaps in coverage. But your fast speed 5G is going to be in the major metropolitan areas, on top of these buildings, on top of these public infrastructures and whatnot. That's where your fast connectivity is going to happen. And so that's why for the networking guys, 5G becomes important, because the rollout is going to be massive. It's going to take years to roll out 5G. Same thing for the AI, big data analytics. You database guys going to have to learn big data analytics. You're going to have to learn the data science side of data management. And then, as usual, like tonight, Black Blockchain Talk, but blockchain goes without saying. You should actually have some form of literacy behind this. Cloud and edge, that's for you system admin guys, you desktop support guys. That's where you're going to be very valuable. And cloud and edge computing. Cybersecurity goes without saying. Immersive technology, you guys who like gaming and things like that, content creation. Immersive technology is going to be about virtual reality. IoT and robotics, those both go hand in hand. A lot of you desktop guys who worked on desktops and laptops and stuff like that in the field, IoT and robotics is going to be very important. All right, let me jump to the next item on the docket. I see we got 2 thumbs down already. Interesting. All right, this one is from the Brookings Institute.edu. Capturing the fourth industrial revolution, a regional and national agenda. The fourth industrial revolution and digitalization will transform Africa into a global powerhouse. Okay, I'm gonna read that again. The fourth industrial revolution and digitization will transform Africa into a global powerhouse.
But they don't like you over there, though.
The fourth industrial revolution, characterized by the fusion of digital, biological, and physical worlds, as well as the growing utilization of new technologies such as artificial intelligence, cloud computing, robotics, 3D printing, and the Internet of Things, and advanced wireless technologies, among others, has ushered in a new era of economic disruption with uncertain social economic consequences for Africa. However, Africa has been left behind during the past industrial revolutions. Will this time be different? So far, it does not appear that Africa has yet claimed the 21st century, as it still lags behind in several indicators essential for a successful digital revolution. Improvements in Africa's ICT sector have been largely driven by expanding mobile digital financial services. The region had nearly half of global money accounts in 2018, and we'll see the fastest growth in mobile money through 2025. But artificial intelligence and blockchain are also attracting interest in Africa, as well as they have the potential to successfully address social and economic challenges there. And there are so many other areas in which fourth industrial revolution technology can be transformational. Africa's ICT development indicators. This is figure 5.1. Africa still lags behind both developed and other developing countries in several indicators essential for the fourth industrial revolution, especially in infrastructure, technology, access, and education. So international internet bandwidth per users, so that Africa is in blue. So Africa is far behind in less than 40,000 or less than 50,000 megabits per second in terms of bandwidth. We know that South Korea pays like $10 a month for like, oodles and bundles of bandwidth. In comparison to the United States, you're paying up the wazoo through Comcast or RCN or something like that, or Verizon. So fixed telephone subscriptions, the continent doesn't have landlines like that. And so they're not going to have any sort of marker available to denote what their place is. Percent of households with a computer. So less than 1% of African households actually have a computer at home. Percent of households with internet access. So again, less than 25% of them have internet access at home. Technology use, fixed wired broadband subscriptions per 100 inhabitants. Africa is below that 1% mark. So all developing nations, they are below that of other nations. Active mobile broadband subscriptions per 100 inhabitants, Africa is actually at the minimum of 25% in relative to the rest of the world. Technology preparedness, so mean years of schooling. So Africa is actually lagging behind in this area for technology preparedness, but this is starting to change according to the next two charts. So secondary gross enrollment ratio is actually not far behind the other developing countries. And obviously developed countries like the United States will have a significant lead amongst them for various reasons, slavery not being included. In recent years, the ICT sector in Africa has continued to grow, a trend that is likely to continue. Of late, mobile technologies and services have generated 1.7 million direct jobs, contributed to $144 billion of economic value, 8.5% of the GDP of sub-Saharan Africa, and contributed $15.6 billion to the public sector through taxation. Digitization has also resolve information asymmetry problems in the financial system and labor market, thus increasing efficiency and certainty and security in an environment where information flow is critical for economic growth and job creation. Failure to recognize and capitalize on fourth industrial revolution opportunities, conversely, will impose considerable risk for African stakeholders. Without attempts to move beyond existing models of innovation, entrepreneurship, and digital growth on the continent, African businesses risk falling further behind, exacerbating the global digital divide and lowering their global competitiveness. Going beyond the existing models requires discipline in governance to allow an endogenous innovative environment. At the same time, institutions must protect the market through consumer protection laws and regulations that encourage competition. So what they're talking about is what I said at the onslaught was that your legacy businesses for Black people have to be able, have to have the agility to adapt to emerging technologies such as those in the fourth industrial revolution that we mentioned in the last article. And so if your business cannot adapt, I don't care if it's a barbershop or a rib shack, you are screwed. Fighting poverty and inequality. The spread of digital technologies can empower the poor with access to information, job opportunities, and services that improve their standard of living. AI, the Internet of Things, IoT, and blockchain can enhance opportunities for data gathering and analysis for more targeted and effective poverty reduction strategies. Already, we have witnessed the transformational power of formal financial services through mobile phones, such as M-Pesa, reaching the underserved, including women who are important drivers for sustainable poverty eradication. These financial services allow households to save in secure instruments to enlarge their asset base and escape cycles of poverty. So, like we were talking about before, the ability to actually leverage your smartphone to have access to the internet is actually very important, because how else will you research certain issues, or how to pronounce certain words, or how to apply to a job with one click of your application? Before, you would have had to go fill out a job application in person and go through 10 to 20 pages of criteria to fill out, first name, last name, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now with technology, you can pretty much log in and have one click application submissions. Reinvents labor skills and production. By 2030, Africa's potential workforce will be among the world's largest. And so, paired with the needed infrastructure and skills for innovation and technology use, the fourth industrial revolution represents a massive opportunity for growth. Indeed, the fourth industrial revolution is dramatically changing global systems of labor and production, requiring that job seekers cultivate the skills and capabilities necessary for adapting rapidly to the needs of African firms and automation more broadly. Already, Africa's working population is becoming better educated and prepared to seize the opportunities provided by the fourth industrial revolution. For example, the share of workers with at least a secondary education is set to increase from 36% in 2010 to 52% by 2030. Remember, we had a gentleman who came onto the panel some weeks ago who said that Africa's literacy rate was at 3%, but we know here that it's above 1/3. And so they are in the right position to actually capture some of these new markets that's going to come from for the fourth industrial revolution. Increase in financial services and investment, digitization has impacted economic growth through inclusive finance and enabling the unbanked to enter formality through retail electronic payments platforms and virtual savings and credit supply technological platforms. More broadly, digitization is enabling entrepreneurs and businesses to rethink business models that are more impactful sustainable, and connected to other sectors of the economy. For example, with fintech, digitization has gone beyond the financial sector to affect the real sector in households, transforming product designs and business models across market segments. Now, businesses are able to design products and trade online, and individuals are able to operate financial services and payments for shopping and investments. The government is also migrating to online platforms to connectivity provide to conveniently provide public services. Yeah, this is very important because Africa does not have all of these traditional banks that we have in the United States. You know, we have brick and mortar institutions we can walk into. In Africa, you don't really have that. And so there are a lot of unbanked, underbanked people on the continent who have access to a cell phone but don't have access to a bank. So how else do you enable their banking abilities? You leverage their phone technology, their smartphone technology, or even their dumb phone technology. Very simplistic phones that only have a keypad and a small LCD screen. You can log into a bank account just by dialing in through, through automated service, and have your money transferred into an account, and then you don't even have to go to a physical bank. You can actually launch your account like M-Pesa, and now you're banked. And the same thing for civil services, right? So the government services, most places in the United States, most cities in the United States have a city hall app or a state app that allows you to engage the your local state and government through an application on your phone. You can pay your taxes. You can pay your excise tax and motorization tax, and you can open up service requests to have potholes filled, and street cleaning, and so on and so forth, all through a municipal apps. So the ability to have a phone and actually connect to government services is actually going to be instrumental in places that are developing. Other fourth industrial revolution technologies are also having impact. For example, in West Africa and Kenya, blockchain has enabled efficient verification of property records and transactions, and expanded access to credit in some previously informal sectors of the economy. Since blockchains are immutable, fraud and thus the cost of risk is reduced. There are also immense opportunities for job creation in Africa, given the informal sector is estimated to constitute 55% of sub-Saharan Africa's GDP, with significant heterogeneity across countries. These tools can be transformational. Their consequences can cascade. Increased financial inclusion contributes to greater capital accumulation and investment, hence potential for employment creation. So engineering cannabis has been extremely vocal about the usage of blockchain from an entrepreneur standpoint and industrialization standpoint. And so this paragraph is actually corroborating his beating of the drum of blockchain's usage in areas of poverty and whatnot, and industrialization and entrepreneurship. Africa has modernizing agriculture and agro industries. Africa has yet to harness the potential of its agricultural sector, and the fourth industrial technology provided an opportunity to do so. Farming alone accounts for 60% of total employment in sub-Saharan Africa, and the food system is projected to add more jobs than the rest of the economy between 2010 and 2025. Farm labor and income is especially important in sub-Saharan Africa, where on-farm activities represent almost 50% of all rural income in countries like Ethiopia, Malawi, Nigeria, and Tanzania. Information on competitive pricing, monitored crop information, disease prevention tips, and fast and disaster mitigation support has the potential to transform the agriculture sector to improve income, production, and demand throughout the continent. Furthermore, as incomes rise across the continent, growing consumer demand for food and beverages will coincide with business to business growth in agro processing. So what they're talking about here is IoT in your agriculture, whether you're farming for basic staples or even something like cannabis, hemp production growth, you can capture all that stuff in real time to the market, and people will pull out their phones and know exactly where this has been grown, who picked it, how long it took to ship, and so on and so forth. So there'll be a supply chain analysis and informative report sit, all across the blockchain in this aspect, including IoT. Ghana-based companies FarmerLine and AgroCentra offer farmers mobile and web technology for agriculture advice, weather information, and financial tips. Zenvas, a Nigerian startup, measures and analyzes soil data to help farmers apply the right fertilizer and optimally irrigate farms. The Sparky Dryer, a dehydration machine invented by a Ugandan engineer, uses biofuel to dehydrate produce and reduce food waste. African entrepreneurs and startups are also using the Internet of Things, IoT, to help farmers optimize productivity and reduce waste through data-driven precision farming techniques. So this is how they are thinking. This is how they're looking at the market for agriculture. As mentioned, one of the companies, one of the startups actually offers farmers mobile and web technology for agricultural advice, weather information, and financial tips. So rather than to irrigate the land or irrigate your crops manually, the weather information may tell you don't bother irrigating manually because there's rain coming in the next 4 hours or the next 24 hours. So that helps you save on water conservation. So this all plays a role in all of this. Same thing with the soil, the ability to manage soil better helps you save money because now you don't have to spend a lot of time in labor trying to manage that area. Improving healthcare and human capital. African countries face numerous health challenges exacerbated by climate change, limited physical infrastructure, and a lack of qualified professionals. Fourth Industrial Revolution technology can help mitigate these threats and build sustainable healthcare systems, especially in fragile states. Mobile technology has become a platform for improving medical data and service delivery. About 27,000 public health workers in Uganda use a mobile system called M-Track to report medicine stocks. The SMS for Life program, a public-private partnership, reduces medicine shortages in primary healthcare facilities by using mobile phones to track and manage stocks levels of malaria treatments and other essential drugs. Rwanda became the first country to incorporate drones into its healthcare system, using autonomous air vehicles to deliver blood transfusion to remote regions. Technology has also improved disaster response. During the West African Ebola outbreak in 2014, WhatsApp became an easy method for dispersing information, checking symptoms, and communicating under quarantine. So again, what they're talking about is telehealth, telemedicine, and tele-emergency services response. And so the ability to leverage smartphones, tablets to actually deliver healthcare as a service is going to be vital for those in remote areas that cannot get to a hospital because they do not have urgent care facilities. But then that becomes a part of micro infrastructure development or medium infrastructure development, where you can take a shipping container at 40 feet and you can actually carve it out to be a urgent care facility. And you can drop those things anywhere within those last mile areas. And so somebody who may be sick with some kind of fever or something like that can actually get access to these remote sort of urgent care facilities in these shipping containers and they don't have to go 4 hours to a hospital and die, quite possibly, for something that's actually treatable. And so you can drop these sort of containers off. They have access with 5G, solar panels, renewable energy, and they're constantly running 24/7. And you don't have to worry about building massive levels of infrastructure like these big general hospitals that you see in the United States. They won't have to do that over there. They can actually have an advanced shipping container that has 2 or 3 beds, where nurse practitioners can actually operate, or not operate, but can actually manage people in that area. So 2, 3, 4 shipping containers as urgent care facilities in places that have 2,000, 3,000 people in an area that's actually going to be critical. Leveraging 5G, leveraging tablet technology, smartphones, and so on and so forth. Engineering cannabis, you have anything you want to add to this? Oh, he's gone. Interesting. All right. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I only have so much time left on here, but I'll get to the solutions area. Strategies for overcoming key challenges facing Africa during the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Clearly, the Fourth Industrial Revolution presents significant opportunities as well as challenges for Africa. The key issue for policymakers is how to position their economies to benefit from the Fourth Industrial Revolution while managing the challenges that it presents. Below are 3 strategies that leaders should prioritize. Since creating jobs for a growing youth population is a priority in most African countries, many governments are reluctant to support technologies that threaten existing jobs. Some of the current technologies tend to replace low-skilled workers, of which Africa has an abundance, with high-skilled workers constraining participation in the Fourth Industrial Revolution to economies with relevant skills. African governments must invest in education and reskilling programs to ensure that technology supplements instead of replaces labor. This is very important. Enhancing agile governance for secure, effective management of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and integration into global value chains. As innovation is at the heart of Fourth Industrial Revolution, reinforcing state and institutional capacity to drive and support innovation and create an enabling business environment is essential for success. A major regulatory challenge involves increasing cybersecurity. Most African countries lack a comprehensive legal framework and institutional capacity to address cybercrime. Instead, efforts to prevent cybercrime are appearing at the more local level or are implemented by private sector actors themselves. For example, between 2015 and 2016, there was a 73% increase in information security management system certified companies from 129 in 2015 to 224 in 2016, with majority in South Africa, Nigeria, and Morocco, adopting widely accepted and appropriate norms and regulations. Such as these is a first step to increasing cybersecurity. At the same time, companies should invest in their employees to develop cybersecurity skills and integrate cyber risk protection in their decision-making process. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement offers a unique opportunity to enhance governance around the Fourth Industrial Revolution. More broadly, the Fourth Industrial Revolution can actually empower service delivery through, for example, national identification and new generation of biometrics that can centralize data for a variety of uses and users. And so this is actually a good point because they don't have typical ID cards, right? Because they don't have a true identification management system like in the United States. And so you see this fragmentation of underbanked people, unbanked people, and so on and so forth, where you can't open up a bank account unless you have an identity, right? You need an identity access management system and an identity national identity management system by the government. So this is a part of the civil engineering and civil services that comes into place. And this is part of the digital transformation that we're talking about. More broadly, adequate infrastructure development will drive and sustain economic transformation in Africa with lower transport and communication costs. Countries with suitable agroecological conditions can produce high-value products, closing the internet connectivity and access gap with advanced economies will enable more African countries to enter service export markets. Small-scale manufacturers in Africa may also become more competitive with access to digital platforms for research, sales, and distribution. So this is very true. You got to lay down fiber at some point. There needs to be a fiber backhaul that connects the continent, that connects different countries within the continent itself. So all of sub-Saharan Africa from east to west should have a broadband connection, a fiber connection that crisscrosses across those countries. It doesn't matter how you get it there. It just needs to take place. And the whole entire continent needs to be looped with one big fiber cable in order to speed up the process. You know, if you wanted to wrap the continent in one cable, you can do that in 9 months, bare minimum. If you had to drill and dig up the ground, excavation to lay down fiber, that's going to take 10, 20, 30 years to do something like that. Even in the United States, it took 10 years just to lay down fiber in most regions because of the cost and the labor. It's just too much. To make the most of the fourth industrial revolution, African governments and entrepreneurs need to recognize new niches for industry and leverage them to achieve sustainable, inclusive growth and take decisive steps to close gaps in digital skills, infrastructure, and research and development. So R&D. And so Africans actually have a game plan. They actually looking at this from a high level and looking to jump in, not while the vehicle stops, but as it's moving. So they're trying to jump on it while it's moving. All right, last item on the docket. Actually, that's not the last item. Why does it feel like I'm missing something here? Oh. Let me make sure I dropped that in there. Give me a second. Let me update the docket real quick, and this will be the last item on the docket. All right. This is from McKinsey.com, The Future of Work in Black America. This is going to be extremely long, so I'm going to jump different paragraphs because this is a 30-minute article. We don't have 30 minutes to read, nor do I want to. There is a well-documented, persistent, and growing racial wealth gap between African-American families and white families in the United States. Studies indicate the median wealth family in the United States holds more than 10 times the wealth of the median African-American family. Apart from its obvious negative impact on African-American individuals, families, and communities, the racial wealth gap constrains the entire U.S. economy. In a previous report, we projected that closing the racial wealth gap could net the U.S. economy between $1.1 trillion and $1.5 trillion by 2028. Despite this, the racial wealth gap threatens to grow as norms, standards, and opportunities in the current U.S. workplace change and exacerbate existing income disparities. One critical disruptor will be the adoption of automation and other digital technologies by companies worldwide. According to estimates from the McKinsey Global Institute, companies have already invested between $20 billion and $30 billion in artificial intelligence technologies and applications. End users, businesses, and economies are hoping to significantly increase their productivity and capacity for innovation through using such technologies. As determined in our previous report on the racial wealth gap, African Americans start from a deprived position in the workforce with an unemployment rate twice that of white workers, a pattern that persists even when controlling for education, duration of unemployment, and the cause of unemployment. Our prior research also shows that African Americans could experience the disruptive forces of automation from a distinctively disadvantaged position, partially because they are often overrepresented in the support roles that are most likely to be affected by automation, such as truck drivers, food service workers, and office clerks. And so we talked about this many times before, but people have tried to disagree with us on this panel. And they said that Black people will do very well or will survive the next 10 to 15 years. But this report is saying otherwise, that the wealth gap is just too much, and the inability to get beyond a certain employment criteria actually has a disadvantage because you can be replaced by a few lines of code. This article builds on these findings using a new and proprietary data set compiled by MGI to construct a 2030 scenario that projects the impact of automation in the national workplace and specific U.S. counties. We reviewed this demographic and employment data in 13 distinct community archetypes across the country to test our previous findings and discover if African Americans are overrepresented in both at-risk roles and within U.S. regions that are more likely to see job declines because of automation. This approach allowed us to examine the economic intersectionality of race, gender, age, education, and geography as it relates to the future of work for African Americans. Economic intersectionality can refer to the compounded effects of any combination of characteristics associated with economic disadvantage. In this article, we focus on differing levels of automation-based challenges for African American men and women of various ages and education levels in rural and urban America. We project that African Americans in the 13 community archetypes we analyzed may have a higher rate of job displacement than workers in other segments of the U.S. population due to rising automation and gaining a smaller share of the net projected job growth between 2017 and 2030. By 2030, the employment outlook for African Americans, particularly men, young workers, ages 18 to 35, and those without a college degree, may worsen dramatically. Additionally, we find that African Americans are geographically removed from future job growth centers and more likely to be concentrated in areas of job decline. These trends, if not addressed, could have a significant negative effect on the income generation, wealth, and stability of African American families. So what they're talking about here is compounded multiple issues. The places that Black people congregate now, their communities, that will be gentrified, on top of the fact that where the job growth is going to take place, they will not be a part of that area. And so as gentrification moves them out, emerging tech jobs move in, they are completely disconnected from those opportunities, and thus Black men are at a very high risk of being replaced through lines of code such as automation and streamlined processing, which will have cascading effects such as the ability to marry, the ability to produce children, and have stable families. The challenges are daunting, but our research reveals opportunities for employment within the African American workforce through strengthening local economies, shifting education profiles to align with growing sectors, engaging companies and public policy makers in developing reskilling programs, and redirecting resources to ease the transition as automation changes the landscape for African-American workers. In this article, we share our findings and note some potential interventions, some of which have already begun. Understanding the 2030 risk for African-Americans. Given that African-American workers face a significant amount of risk from the rise of automated technologies in the workplace, and in an effort to identify the most targeted and effective interventions, we analyze a range of relevant factors, including occupations that are most at risk from automation, job growth and decline in various regions in the United States, and the disproportionate impacts of automation on African-American subpopulations. Taken together, these factors reveal the macro level and local level impact of job loss on African-Americans. So they're talking about 2030, which is 10 years from now, how this is going to play out based on a simulation that they've developed here. As shown in prior research, African Americans are overrepresented in occupations likely to be most affected by automation, and this remains accurate for our 2030 projection. In addition, African Americans are underrepresented in the occupational categories that are most resistant to automation-based displacement. African Americans are overrepresented in office support, food services, and production work industries. The industries are most vulnerable to a net loss in jobs, whereas African Americans are underrepresented in professions such as education, health, business, legal, in which there could be a net gain in jobs. So Dr. Phoenix has talked about this before, about health care. Black men are highly underrepresented in particular. African Americans are underrepresented in low displacement job categories. Overrepresentation of African Americans in 3 occupation categories with the highest expected displacement. So they're showing in a graph, not a graph, but in a in this figure, places where Black people are constantly being concentrated in terms of growth, right? So displacement rates are greater than 1/3. And underrepresentation in places such as healthcare professionals, physicians, as it says right here, for example, business and legal professionals, lawyers, right, attorneys, property maintenance and agriculture. So we know that Latinos have come into this country, have taken over the janitor custodial sector for labor. And so Black people have been kind of shut out from that inadvertently. Our research also shows that African Americans tend to hold occupations that at the lower end of the pay scale. Only half of the top 10 occupations that African Americans typically hold pay above the federal poverty guidelines for a family of 4, $25,750. And all 10 of those occupations fall below the median salary for a U.S. worker, $52,000. Many of these occupations are among the top 15 occupations most at risk of automation based on displacement, and are also projected to affect young African American workers without a college degree. So when we talk about upskilling, Black people need to upskill, or ADOS needs to upskill. Foundational Black Americans need to upskill because they cannot compete going forward into 2030. That's why we talk about Udacity, getting certifications and so on and so forth, because you cannot get out of that labor role that keeps you at $25,750. That's not possible. That's not logical for growth, right? You're going to be highly sustained in that area. And you won't be able to actually compete, because once those jobs disappear, your skill set has not actually changed and adjusted. So there was no upskill there, especially if you don't have a college degree, especially something like an associate's. African American employment is concentrated in low paying jobs. So cashiers, combined food preparation and service workers, including fast food, retail salespersons, nursing assistants, personal care aides. What is this stupid thing doing? Customer service representatives, laborers in freight, stock, and material movers. So office workers and general office workers, janitors and cleaners, except maids and housekeeping cleaners, stock clerks and order refillers. So you think about a pharmacy. A pharmacy has order refillers, order fillers. And so what this other portion is saying here is that African American demographic concentration by percentage, they show female at being 78% and under 35 is 75%. So over 2/3 of African American females are concentrated in these at-risk roles for displacement due to automation. But we've talked about this many times on here before. 8 of the 10 industries that are going to be automated, Black women actually fill these roles. And we're seeing it right here. We're seeing it right here. This report just actually came out a couple weeks ago. So keep that in mind. Retail sales, Black women make up half in the concentration percentage-wise and concentration of retail sales. These jobs will be automated or replaced. Nursing assistants, Dr. Phoenix and Supertriz and some of these, Michael Coleman and a couple of these other guys who work in healthcare have said that Black women fill these areas. They witness this themselves in their day-to-day travels in healthcare. 89%, they make up 89%. These jobs are due to be replaced with automation in some areas. But nursing assistant is a part of the low-paying jobs because they're oversupplying for the demand. Customer service reps, Black women make up the majority of them, right? And so you're also, they're also under 35, so they're also millennials. These are all millennials that we're talking about here. They make up a vast majority of those employed in these areas. We measure job displacement as a percentage of jobs potentially lost due to automation by 2030 and found that because of their concentration in occupations at risk of automation, African Americans have one of the highest rates of potential job displacement when compared with other groups, while the Asian population has a displacement rate of 21.7%, and while in the white population has a displacement rate of 22.4%. The African American population has a potential displacement rate of 23.1%, which is outpaced by the Hispanic Latino population displacement rate of 25.5%. While these differences may seem minimal, they translate into a potential loss of approximately 132,000 African American jobs due to automation by 2030. We talked about this many times before. Our 2030 scenario also indicates that African Americans could capture a smaller share of new job growth in the economy compared with white and Asian populations based on their current job growth outlook for these groups. There is also a possibility that higher growth occupations that currently have a high representation of African Americans become more attractive to workers of other races, further reducing their already small share of new jobs available to African Americans by 2030. So they're talking about there's going to be this tight squeeze by other groups, racial groups come in and actually compete for those small niche factor job opportunities that African Americans should be taking advantage of. Community archetypes, occupational distribution within the African American community and geographic concentration both affect the potential for job displacement or growth. Building on MGI's prior identification of 13 discrete community archetypes, we were able to analyze the employment prospects of African Americans in different areas of the United States in the projected wake of automation. The largest amount of projected African American job disruption from automation could be in areas where the largest African American populations, particularly in megacities, such as counties that include Chicago and Washington, D.C., and in stable cities, such as the counties that include Detroit and Baltimore. However, these geographic archetypes also show the disconnect between areas where African Americans are currently concentrated in areas most likely to see job growth. African Americans are underrepresented in 5 out of 6 projected fastest growing geographical archetypes. So we talked about that before. 8 out of the 10 roles that Black women occupy will be replaced by automation. And they also say here that these geographic archetypes also show the disconnect between areas where African Americans are currently concentrated and are areas likely to see job growth. So they don't even exist in these areas that's going to see new jobs come out. They're so far removed from it because of things like gentrification and other political disruptions. African Americans are underrepresented in 5 out of 6 projected fastest growing geographical archetypes and are overrepresented in 2 of the 6 slow growing archetypes, including the one archetype that has shown negative growth. Distressed Americana showed negative net job growth from 2007 to 2017 and is projected to show negative job growth through 2030. African Americans in these distressed areas may disproportionately feel the negative effects of impending economic and technological changes, see fewer new opportunities, and face additional challenges in transitioning to the economy of the future. Fourth industrial revolution is what they're talking about. So these are the cities, the archetypes. High growth hubs of Seattle. See high net growth. African Americans in these areas are underrepresented. So you see it here in Black, and actually the African American workforce in millions. So and you look at the percentages, not the percentage, the millions, and the rating of weighted African American workforce is actually significantly lower in some areas. Oh, I can't see anything. All right, let me look at this real quick and do a closeout. African American women are expected to fare better than African American men in the age of automation, largely due to gains in healthcare related roles. African American work representation among male dominated jobs illustrative set of occupations. So construction managers, software developers, systems software, labor and freight stock and material movers hand, industrial truck and tractor operators. So these are high net growth jobs between 2017 and 2030. This is what's available for Black men here in percentages. African American female employees have high net growth jobs between 2017 and 2030. Correctional officers and jailers, home health aides, nursing assistants, personal care aides, practical and vocational nurses, teaching assistants, registered nurses. And again, Black women fare out better because they major in these sort of areas of healthcare. nursing assistants, they can transition from a nursing assistant to maybe an LPN or something like that. Maybe a pharmacy technician, something like that. Whereas Black men don't really major in these areas at that level. And so they're constantly in areas of disruption by automation. And so Black women actually fare out better in that particular context, but Black men actually are at risk and are constantly at risk here. The picture is less positive for African American men. African American men are underrepresented in the top 15 occupations for men, based on the 2017-2030 net job growth. That includes software developers and general and operations managers. Additionally, African American men are overrepresented in the bottom 15 occupations. That includes industrial truck operators and stock clerks. Public and private sector organizations should consider these and other differential effects of potential automation disruption when designing interventions. And so I want to make sure I reread the sentence because it says this picture is less positive for African American men. African American men are underrepresented in the top 15 occupations for men. That includes software developers. So software developers, we talked about coding, right? Python, C++, Java, JavaScript, C#. These languages that Black men should actually learn. They're talking about this right here, software developers, and Black men are underrepresented in these areas. And so there's less opportunity, there'll be less opportunity for them as the high growth job concentration areas in cities actually become further apart from where they tend to live. And so IT in particular is exactly where Black men need to be going forward. This is what this report is saying. You have to be in these areas. If you're not in these areas, you are at risk for not being employed after 2030. I mean, it's 2020 now, but that's 10 years from now. All right, let me expand this. So, all right, preparing for the future. There are many challenges as the numbers show, but opportunities for African American workers and public and private sector institutions to limit the adverse effects of automation remain. Our research and experience in the field point to two sets of solutions that can help alleviate the challenges compounded by economic intersectionality. The first set of solutions targets geographies, that is, improving economic conditions in regions in which African Americans are currently concentrated or enabling African American worker mobility. The second set targets capabilities, that is, improving skill development and education levels in African American community to create additional pathways to better occupations that could be at lower risk of disruption by automation. And so we see Black people at the, let me read this caption real quick. Leaders should concentrate on finding solutions in regions where African American workers are likely to bear a disproportionate share of the job decline burden. So we're looking at this graph right here, and it shows that Black people are at the declining area, whereas white people are at the inclining area. So, and Hispanics are just above that of ADOS, but are far behind Hispanic Asians, and whites are always at the greater end of the spectrum. And there are, and according to this graph right here, it shows that Black people in most of your major cities are constantly at the declining mark. Baltimore, Wayne County in Detroit, Norfolk City, Virginia Beach, St. Louis. It's even worse. I mean, they get a double whammy here in St. Louis. Hinds County, Mississippi. Shreveport, Louisiana. African American share of the workforce is actually at is half or below, except for Shreveport. So, oh, not Shreveport. Sorry, Mississippi. Those jobs are massive decline. Areas that Black people actually occupy. So, at some point, they will be replaced. Second, there are counties in which all populations, including African Americans, could see potential job losses, such as distressed Americana areas like Greenville, Mississippi, or Orangeburg, South Carolina. For these counties, public and private sector institutions can pursue large-scale economic development strategies to increase jobs and opportunities. Top 10 counties for African Americans net job growth. So Harris County, Houston has the highest significant rate of job growth where Black people would occupy or become available for Black people. Dallas County in Texas as well. Fulton County, Atlanta. Mecklenburg County, Charlotte. So we talked about Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham. Those are going to be high growth areas soon because of the tech space. Duke University, UNC, Charlotte, and all those places that, that technology triangle, Raleigh Triangle Park, I think that's the name of it, RTP. Wake County, Raleigh. So we talked about Raleigh before. Broward County, Miami, Florida. That's in Kings County, New York. Newark, New Jersey. And Los Angeles County, California. So LA. All right, capabilities, support in attainment of higher education. Disparities in educational attainment are a primary contributor to the increased risk of job disruption for automation for the African American workforce. The projected displacement risk drops significantly for African American white employees who have bachelor's degrees. However, African Americans are overrepresented in the population that has only some college experience or no college experience. And they are significantly underrepresented in the population that has bachelor's or graduate degrees. So Black people who have who would need a bachelor's degree or a master's degree significantly low in comparison to other groups. And they're overrepresented in areas where you don't have a degree or may have not completed post-secondary education. HBCUs educated and trained almost 20% of all African American college graduates, despite making up only 3% of the country's colleges and universities. So HBCUs still play a significant role for Black people. Increased educational attainment can help African American workers better prepare for coming automation-driven disruption. Less than a high school diploma, Black people make up an overrepresentation there. High school diploma, they have a significant portion there as well. Associate's degree or some college. $38 million jobs available, and only 17% of those will be lost to automation for white Americans with a college degree, and African Americans make up a significant portion as well. It'll be harder impact here. Beyond investing in HBCUs, the higher education sector can seek to improve retention and completion rates for African Americans. Currently, African American students have the lowest sixth-year completion rates of all demographics. Matching high criteria occupations competencies. So making sure that, like I was saying earlier about guys who do network, who are network analysts, network engineers, need to be focused on 5G. You know, guys who do desktop support need to be focused on IoT, Internet of Things, robotics. We see enabling occupation switching and reskilling. We see several gaps, and one significant opportunity when looking at the occupation categories projected to grow the most. African Americans are overrepresented in the highest growing occupational categories: health aides, technicians, and wellness. As previously noted, the overrepresentation of African American women in these professions primarily drives this outcome. Additionally, as previously determined, African Americans are significantly underrepresented in occupational categories poised to grow: health professionals, business, and law and education. So Black people make up low numbers of occupations where there's going to be high growth. And a lot of your healthcare jobs are really driven by Black women, not so much by Black men. So Black men are kind of left out of that area. One strategy that may bolster opportunities for African American workers is these fast growing occupations and occupation switching. Many African Americans currently hold occupations that require skills compatible with those in faster growing, higher paying cost occupations at lower risk of displacement. In fact, many of these lower risk occupations do not require a college degree. For example, the skills associated with two positions, stock clerks and team assemblers, are 91% compatible. However, team assemblers are paid $6,000 more annually than stock clerks and are projected to see an increase in job opportunities, while stock clerks could see a significant decline due to the rise of automation. Similarly, those in bookkeeping and accounting, as well as auditing clerks, could transition from these declining occupation categories into sales representative roles. Compatibility among those roles, or these roles, is 89%. And sales representatives expect to receive approximately $17,000 more in annual pay alongside greater job opportunities by 2030, highlighting these opportunities through existing career counseling services and ensuring equal access to such services can further enable occupation switching. So occupation switching means that you're taking your base skill set and you're applying it to something that's going to be more fundamentally applicable, for job growth. So like I said before, electricians or even auto mechanics will have to get into something like micro transportation, EVs and things of that nature. Electricians, when you have to can't just focus on just basic electricity anymore. At the residential level, you're going to have to focus on renewable energies. All right, I'm not going to read this whole, actually, it's the end of it. So we have Ejisa on the panel. Oh, that's not Ejisa, that's the engineering candidates.
Okay, I'm back. The article right now, all what I got from it is basically, if your career or if your job doesn't have any tech in it, it's gonna basically at the end and coming soon, it will have tech. So the goal is to basically start learning how to code, learning how to innovate. So if you're a security guard, become a security analyst, learn how to basically decipher data, learn how to utilize data, learn how to use IoT, learn how to use drones. If you're a customer service representative, maybe you're a clerk or something, you have to know how to basically know how to write code or know how to repair the technology that's going to replace you. So the goal is to, in coming soon, every career, every job will have tech involved in it. So your goal now is just to learn and to improve on it.
Yeah, tech literacy is going to be very important. They consider that if you don't know how to send an email or even do a Google search properly, you are considered to be illiterate.
Yeah, and even in agriculture now, it will be a tech base. The goal in agriculture, the goal is to produce a sustainable crop every year to year, and it has to be consistent. So the way to do that is tech, and you will have utilize blockchain, IoT especially, and machine learning. So in agriculture, those technologies will be used together in agriculture itself. So when I started looking at based on this channel, I was introduced to blockchain, and I saw how innovative blockchain will be, and I started learning how to code the blockchain, and I saw the linkage between blockchain and AI and all that, and you can see it once you start doing these codes and learning about it. You will see that link, you will see that pathway, and you will see ideas popping out on ways to implement all this in your job, in your everyday life. But you just have to start learning it. And once you learn it, you will see the pathway and see where you can implement it. Mm-hmm. And it's very profitable.
Right. Well said. We got Complex Design on the panel.
What up, man?
What's going on? Your mic is breaking up.
Shit. Sorry, man. I'm just getting on Wi-Fi. Just getting in the house. Just getting in everything.
Yeah. So the report, I think, is groundbreaking. It's a recent report that came out, and Black men are at high risk. And every time we talk about this type of stuff, people will come up here and tell you that the economy is doing good. Black men don't need to be worried about that. I got to get mine before you get yours. It's all about this rugged individualism. And people are not thinking about the long term. They're talking about 2030. You are at risk of losing not just your job, but your place within society.
But you see it every day. If you go to your everyday, if you go to your fast food restaurants, you go to your theaters, you see that implementation of those tech, and you see the implementation of people losing their jobs. And you hear it in the news on how people lose their jobs, or how manufacturing is being downsized. And you see the trends. The trends are picking up every day. So the goal now is for you to basically look at the trends, see, okay, how can I basically create a solution for myself? How can I make sure these trends don't impact me negatively? And that's how you should be looking at it. And it's written on the wall, and you can see it every day.
Yep. And people are pretending that they can just wait it out. You cannot wait. You can't wait until the last minute. You can't cram for this exam. This is either you get skills now or you suffer by 2030. You will be displaced and you will be obsolete.
It's like trying to learn like HTML now.
Yeah.
It's like you're about 25 years behind.
Yeah, and it takes time to learn it. So you can't just, because once it becomes a high, when it becomes desperate, you don't learn it. You just cram and you don't learn it well.
Right. You can't.
So
you can't do it.
Yeah, the goal is for you to learn it and innovate with it. Mm-hmm. But if you're just doing it for necessity, you're not learning it. You're just doing it just to have a check, and at that point, you might not learn it well enough to be dangerous in the society.
Right, and we read these two articles, right? So one article focused on African Americans, and the other one focused on Africans and how they can capitalize off of this, and they're in the right position to do so. Whereas in Black America, that's not the case. Black people are so disconnected from the high growth environments because of gentrification and other socioeconomic impacts on them, that even though the opportunities are going to be there, you're one, so far removed from it physically, and two, your skill set is lacking. You lack in skill set in these areas necessary to compete for these high growth markets. And so when we talk about fourth industrialization, people were like, oh, how would you know if it's 2053? Black people will it'll be do or die for Black people. Well, it may not be 2053. Maybe Dr. Phoenix is right. Dr. Phoenix said, he says by 2030.
We were trying to be nice.
Yeah, we were being very liberal, and
trying to give y'all the benefit of the doubt here, man.
And Africans are in a better position collectively in sub-Saharan Africa than African Americans are in America, because, as we said a few seconds ago, the disproportionate geographic issues as well as the skill set is just not there. It's lacking. Black people, Black men, least likely to have this post-secondary education necessary to actually function in the fourth industrial revolution.
But what solutions do you think that might be able to basically stave off this bad scenario where African Americans and everybody can compete? So what solutions do you think might be implemented?
Well, the article,
go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, the article is saying that upskilling, right? So the government would have to drive an initiative to upskill in these areas and actually create more incentives for companies to open up businesses there, right? Because a lot of it is going to be driven by bigger industry, right? IBM and so on and so forth, SAP and GE and whatnot. Those are where your companies are going to have to open up shop there in order for those businesses to be widely available for them, but for them to employ them. But if you don't have that, if the companies look at demographics, right? So they look at a specific area and they say, we in Boston, they have a specific area where all the businesses function, all the tech companies go to, right? Those areas are largely non-Black. And so there is no reason for IBM to open up a tech center inside a predominantly Black neighborhood if the academic level of achievement is below that of a college education. And so we need to start looking at beyond traditional schooling, right? So now maybe you don't need that master's degree. Maybe you might just need that micro degree, that nano degree from Udacity. Maybe that might be a better fit for you because you might be able to learn about autonomous vehicles and develop autonomous driving stacks through an open source sort of platform. And then you can compete in these areas and create a startup and create out of an incubator and drive acceleration that way.
No, it makes total sense to do it that way. I really don't see the point in getting a college degree for something like micro transport or something like that. I don't even have a micro degree in micro transport, dude. I just learned it. So
from a different perspective, but what about, because this is focusing on 18 to 35.
No, that's what I mean. I'm saying for somebody like myself, who's really just kind of like a hack type dude who just, who fabs and all that. If you're good with tools and stuff like that, and you've just been building like everything from RC cars to real cars to whatever, you can figure stuff out, right? But let's just say that's not your background, right? What was that, Mike?
Mechanical aptitude.
Yeah, right. But let's say that's really not where you come from, right? Then that's when, to me, a Udacity, EDX courses, stuff like that, just over like, oh, let me go get this 4-year degree. You don't in these type of venues, you don't really need it if you have certifications that place you directly in the course of action where things are happening. So like you go to Udacity, you get the micro certs in automated driving, artificial intelligence. That puts you squarely in a position at Tesla.
Yeah, but that would be nice if the Black person actually lived close to Tesla, right? So
Yeah,
that's what the report is saying, that Black people live disproportionately.
right. There's nothing tech centered like in close proximity to Black communities.
Right, and that's why we talked about this before. These maker lab innovation facilities being set up, so that you can actually demonstrate, that give them a blank canvas to work from. And that's where the government needs to step in, which is what the report is saying. This is what government needs to step in. There is no other way around that, right? Yeah, you can have a predominantly Black area that's low income, but if nothing's driving the industry around it, then it doesn't matter, right? It's just a bunch of people, poor people living together. I'm surprised that Mississippi, is basically like a third world country. You would think Mississippi is Syria with the same places, man.
But that's why I'm down there actually setting up these type of things that could happen. Down there.
Yep. What up, MOT?
What up? Let's go to EGC. He got his hand up.
Hey, real quick, what's up, guys? Can you hear me?
Yo.
Hey, I just want to say, in addition to Mike had said something earlier, I will say that even if you start to increase your skills, the closer to the bottom you are, the more dangerous it is. The reason why I say that, something like I used to be a pharmacy tech, and someone might think, okay, well, that's pretty safe, but a certification like that really doesn't require a high school diploma. So the less schooling that you have, when things start getting, when the market starts getting tight, a lot of people, I mean, the ones that have been slacking off, some of them might get it together and start going into some of the easier fields. Heck, even LP and RN, those are relatively easy to get. So I would just say the closer you are to the bottom, the more dangerous it is. So, I mean, I would advise Black males to get as far ahead of the pack as possible while they can.
They are disproportionately impacted according to this report.
Yeah.
High risk for being completely.
So just don't just get a nursing degree and think, oh, you're gonna be fine. Like, try to complement that with some type of tech certification or just something, or try to go for a master's in acute nurse practitioner or CRNA. Try to stay far ahead to keep to where most people aren't gonna go, and that will keep you as safe as possible. Because right now, pharmacy tech, you'd be surprised. It's like I said, it doesn't take a high school. All you need is a high school diploma, but you get a lot of people in there that after a while, they might struggle or whatever. Or you tend to get a lot of these programs. They tend to they'll pay for like single mothers with kids to train them into these type of programs. Then so now you're competing with those type of people, and as Black males, we never our jobs are always in jeopardy. So try to stay as far ahead of the pack as possible. That's all I'll say.
Well, I've always been a big fan. I've always been a big fan of us being, being both hands involved in, the business class, ownership and shit like that. I get that it's not for everyone. We talk about it all the time, and there's always kind of like this pushback of, well, not everybody's going to do it. It's like, we're not speaking to everybody. Like we're speaking to those who have it, who can put it all together in their mind and see it come to fruition. Like as far as like their own startup, a consultancy, whatever it is, it's like for those who have the ability to think something all the way through to completion, then like this realm is for you. And then for the people who are more just kind of skill set oriented, then it's what Mike is talking about, upskilling. Like whatever the case may be, we have to really just be thinking about not just being above the fray, but actually having a hand in directing where the fray is going. Like we got to adopt that mindset, like, oh, the single mothers we're competing with them for jobs. Why are we competing with single mothers for jobs?
Well, because there's overrepresentation in highly disruptive areas of occupation. That's what the report is saying.
Yeah.
So Black men are always in these sort of laborious areas that can be disrupted by automation. And how do you get around all of that? Well, you have to put yourself in. Basically, the one snippet that I captured from the report is that it says Black men need to be in areas of software development. They're talking about IT, but we've been talking about this for the last 2 or 3 years now. That's where Black men need to be dominating is the information technology sector.
And to compliment what Complex was saying, the reason why you're competing with them is because they're always going to give them a leg up. They can come in there and they can go into any local workforce unemployment office and get some type of schooling and training. So, like I said, don't get comfortable thinking, oh, I'm in a field that can be touched. Yes, healthcare is relatively safe, but the closer you are to the bottom, the more people. It's almost like what's that, World War Z or whatever? Like all these zombies climbing to the top. Some of them are going to get over, and then the closer you are to that, to that level.
That's not necessarily it, EG. So the report is saying that basically Black women's labor is equal to that of Black male labor, right? Because the skill set is very low and not really all that challenging. So it doesn't matter about the programs. What matters here is for a store clerk or a cashier or something like that, Black male labor, Black female labor is going to be the same.
Right. That's why I said, why are we competing?
Yeah, it's going to be the same. It's equal at more often than not. So what I'm saying, what we're overall saying here is that Black men are not highly focused on areas of emerging opportunities, and they are disproportionately disconnected from all of these areas too, because of lack of stationary housing and things of that nature, opportunity to housing. They're just so disconnected from these areas. They're usually about an hour away from these areas, which makes it just disproportionately impactful on their ability to obtain considerable work, because they can't get access to IBM because they live so fucking far away from IBM.
And in reference to startups, the IT has the biggest opportunity in terms of starting in startups. And in reference to basically IoT, blockchain, and AI, I can tell you 10 ideas right now in terms of startups that can basically impact everything from security, cannabis, to anything, because it's that impactful. And if you study it, you can see it. And once you can see it, you can implement it. And it's wide ranging, it's impactful, and it's going to be huge.
Well, engineering, it's almost akin, and we keep likening it to Web 1.0. I don't think back in like the mid 90s, in the whole AOL Netscape era, that people could sort of foresee like the PayPal era, you know what I mean? E-commerce era and all of that. So it's just like what you're saying, like if you can fundamentally understand what the capabilities of the technology are, you start to think future application. And, it's like we can sit here and talk about future application, and then people will be thinking like, these niggas is just talking all this crazy shit. Okay, tell Jeff Bezos he was crazy back in 1997 when he launched Amazon. Tell him then he was crazy, and today he'll flash his billions and he goes, you know what? You're right. I was crazy. You see,
yeah.
so
Well, I think a part of this issue, like the report is saying, the government has to play a significant role in this. We need to treat the Black community as a startup, as a 240-year startup or 150-year post Civil War startup.
And Mike, I agree with that. And I mean, there's a lot of cash readily available if we could somehow redirect it from like the black churches to like the black startups. Then we wouldn't have any problem with startup capital.
Well, not even just that. The disproportionate impact that the government played in gentrifying areas and the drug policies against Black people, they should be compensated through a social equity program.
Well, I was just about to say, I think we take the social equity piece, and we could probably even take the cannabis model and then tweak it for tech.
But the cannabis model, remember, right now the cannabis model is being adopted, but many people of color are not signing up.
Well,
it's a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of knowledge, not so much that they don't want to. It's just
so that's it's readily available, but I'm not, especially when I look at the records in Chicago and other places, or in Illinois, I'm not seeing a record number of people of opening transportation hubs for cannabis.
Well, because the red tape around it is very difficult.
Yeah, it is. That is.
Yeah, I think in Illinois, the stuff that they did there in legalizing it, man, they all but guaranteed to freeze you out, unless that you land some sort of token position somewhere. But as far as being like a cultivator or somebody like that, oh hell no. Those licenses were locked up.
But that's why I always promote tech with cannabis.
But there you go, because there's more to it.
It's more accessible. Yep. With tech and cannabis, is more accessible and it's more profitable than actually touching it. Once you implement it, if you're a security owner and a security analyst for a cannabis company, and you run for the whole of Chicago, that's millions in your bank account.
Yeah, but the thing is that there are parties involved that also want to make sure that Black people don't have access to it. So I think when I talk about treating the Black community as a post-civil rights startup community, there has to be investments in creating an incubator, an accelerator, and some form of wet lab, and as well as a tech lab spaces, so that they can actually create their own platforms within the startup base itself, and put that within a land trust so that it can't be so easily disrupted, but through gentrification. So it is, you have to treat that from start to finish. I think what's happening in a lot of these discussions in the manosphere is that people want a get rich quick scheme or instant gratification, and don't think about the long-term aspect about this. And that's what the report is talking about.
Right.
2030 is going to be the end of the cycle of that fourth industrial stage, right? So all the systems are going to be online. Billions of IoT devices are going to be online. Micro-transportation, other disruptive apps and whatnot, and business models are going to come into play. Your Airbnbs and things of that nature. We covered an article the other week, where a startup company involved in construction, bulldozers and backhoes and things of that nature, put a device on top of the bulldozer and actually can drive it. It can automate it. It's basically a bolt-on. I mean, that's disruptive.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's what I mean, man. Sometimes it's like the most radical game-changing ideas, shout out to Game Changer, doesn't require a whole rethinking of the wheel. Sometimes it's just like, coming up with a new way to create a lug nut for a wheel, like something very small, like a little box that automates an entire machine that you didn't have to dump millions of dollars into developing. You just said, you know what? I can just create this little device that'll make that thing move by itself.
It connects.
Huh?
No, I was saying it basically connects to the OBD2 sensor on the.
It literally that's what I mean. Dude, it literally plugs into the OBD2 Two. Okay. Do you realize how much you could buy like a bulk box of OBD2 connectors for?
Mm.
Like, so these, I mean, like if you get them from China, man, I don't know, probably like maybe $2 a piece, $3 a piece. We're good. A really good one, $5 a piece. And then, so you start there and then you build your apparatus. What are they using? Like some sort of Raspberry Pi or something?
Nah,
Probably something a little more robust.
yeah, they're probably using something a little bit more sophisticated, like maybe an Intel
Right.
sock or maybe a
Okay.
Qualcomm sock, because
Yeah.
those are more
Yeah. I mean,
tailored to the platform.
yeah. You look at the components that they're using. I mean, it when you really break it down, it's not really like whether if it's really sophisticated, it's application. It's what that thing can make something like a bulldozer do. A bulldozer is not a small machine. It does very huge, large amounts of work. And if this one little small device can make that thing do it automatically 24 hours a day, do you realize how much money you just made somebody?
Mm-hmm.
And that implementation is what I was looking at in the cannabis space, especially for cultivation, linking blockchain, AI, and IoT for cultivation, automate the whole cultivation process, eliminating anybody in there and make it more efficient and consistent.
Now, engineer, let me ask you, are you, from how it sounds to me, would this be something to where, like, based on how you're talking about it, you could have theoretically, let's say 3 cultivation sites, right? Indoor, fully controlled. And let's say let's say they were in 3 different states.
Yeah.
But utilizing this type of system, even though there's 3 independent cultivation states or three independent cultivation sites,
independent cultivation states, 3 independent strains.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually do all that. Yes.
And what I'm saying, is this remotely automated, or how we're doing this, or is this?
It's fully automated. Basically, utilizing blockchain. Mm-hmm. You can utilize blockchain to basically develop a data set for each block for each strain.
See, that's why when you say this, man, the more you say it, the more it's starting to kind of I'm starting to get a picture in my head.
I'm doing it. I'm already writing.
That's what I mean. That's why I was asking you. I mean, I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
so you keep talking about this.
I'm trying to write a code for it.
Okay.
So you develop a chain, a block for your strain, and in the strain, in that block, the strain will have all your variables, your pH, your temperature, your every variable controlling in that cultivation. So once you access that block, the data can be deciphered based on now you use AI and you decipher it based on vegetation when it grows. So you track it based on the body stage.
What stage of the veg or the flowering? How much? Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
See, that's what I'm working on. So once you do that, then you know exactly what controls that cultivation. Wow. Then you input that information into the IoT, and it controls everything automatically.
And I was going to say, so from the IoT standpoint, now you're talking about all of your
so
pumps.
You're accessing that block. So you just open that block, all the information goes straight directly into the IoT, and the IoT automatically basically takes it into control and basically starts driving your pH, your temperature.
Right. I was going to say, from there, it controls your light cycles, light intensity,
everything is controlled.
All the pumps. Wow. Okay.
So from that block, so what I'm looking at, I started looking at blockchain. So you just need to control that block. You open that block.
Let me tell you something, man. Like, you need to pick my brain, bro. I'm here, man.
No problem. But that's what I've been doing, trying to develop that block. Once you develop that block, you can automate the whole cultivation site. The same thing with security. You can do that with the security system. The same thing with security. But with security, because what drives security right now is fear, the fear of the unknown, your security. But what drives your security now is, instead of fear of the known, is data from your from the police station, data from your security community, data basically on-time data that
Like
drives your
literally,
whole security system.
you would be taking inputs from
Input from everybody.
traffic, like from traffic,
Traffic,
police feeds, the
police
fire
feed,
departments, the
your local,
EMTs.
your local security, everything. So if there's a problem, immediately your security basically changes. Your time, maybe if you're using drone, your time cycle for your drone changes.
Right,
Your time cycle for your camera changes. Your time cycle for your security agency
I'm fucking
changes.
with this, man, because I see it. I'm fucking with it big time. Yeah.
So you see how those technologies drive. So once I started developing the codes and all that, I saw how these technologies can be implemented, and you can see it immediately.
See, that's
So
why
that's
you
how
was
it works.
arguing. That's why you were arguing with me when I said like the best weed you can grow is outdoor. You were like, no, you could do it indoor.
You can do it because I started looking at I started looking at sour diesel with the high THC content. And the goal now is to get that consistent high THC content. And how do you get it consistently? You have to automate your system. And if you have a master grower, you have to look at the master grower and ask how does he get it consistently? Then you quantify it. Then you put it in a blockchain. And you put it in a block, then you access it through the vegetation, what I talked about, vegetation and all that.
Right. Yep.
Then you put it in IoT. Then your whole automated system is quick and easy. It basically tracks everything from pH, everything. You're quick to go and basically your whole grow is basically automated.
And it's perfect. It's perfect for the cannabis sphere because the blocks they update every 7 seconds, and you need something because dude, like there's dudes that are like kind of like let their shit go. They had it on timers, right? But let's just say they was gone for 2 days. They came back and they didn't realize the power went out.
But
and they came in, dude. Plants are all wilted, falling over and shit. Yeah.
But if it's automated, once if it hits, an alarm basically senses and like, hey,
right, exactly.
Your cell phone, there's a problem in your grow. Better
you
go up there and check.
Yeah.
So this is automated, and you have less manpower, and you're growing a consistent product. So I'm starting looking at coding of all this and trying to see the implementation in IoT.
Yeah. I mean, that's all part of this process, man. I mean, I don't know how well because you have different statutes on the books and zoning laws and stuff like that prevent some of this stuff from happening in major urban centers where Black people highly concentrate. So there's a lot of organization that needs to take place for Black people to take advantage of a lot of this stuff because they can't allow somebody else to come in and govern it for them. You know, they need to be governing it for themselves. But I wanted to bring this video up because we were talking about the continent earlier and their adoption into fourth innovative revolution, like looking at the industrial side.
Mike, we've been saying this. We said, look, for the fourth it's gonna be overlaid on top of what you see. So you might see roads and bushes and trees and all that, but you're also going to see electric bikes and smartphones.
Yeah,
you know, power walls.
And this is what we're working on from a micro transportation perspective. This
it's a cargo bike. Yeah, it's a cargo bike.
Yeah, this cargo bike can go 23 miles on a single charge and carries up to 150 kilograms max payload.
You replace a bunch of delivery vehicles with these things right here. Do you realize like how much you just reduced your overhead, like your operating costs, your overhead, your maintenance costs, your insurance costs? Like this is why we say when you look at how Africa is set to grow, it's not going to go through the same type of industrial phases that we've gone through. It's going to start with fourth industrial. It's going to start with this shit. It's going to start with the butter laid shit.
Yeah.
That's where it's going to start.
Yeah. And don't forget it's pedal powered, so it's hybrid for all intents and purposes. But
pedal assist.
Yeah, but this is last mile logistics delivery, right? They're cutting UPS and FedEx out of the equation. You know, maybe UPS and FedEx.
Bro, they're fucking building these joints there.
Yeah,
That's what's up.
but they don't like you though.
They don't like you though.
It's an all women factory, so it's what they call micro manufacturing, where you have small space in a room, and you're basically building, 1 or 2 bikes a day, or 3 or 4 bikes a day.
What we did at the shop in Northridge, where we build the BM e-bike stuff. So it's kind of the same concept, but there's a manufacturing concept. I can't remember the name of it. My buddy Tim was putting me up on game. But basically, what you do is you take one space, and you make you use the space in such a way where you can come up with like 3 to 4 different layouts, which can expand your capability of manufacturing. So in the same space where BM e-bikes are built, right now, as the way it's currently set up, I think we can crank out like 10 a day. And then if we kind of rotate things and move things around a certain way based on the schematics, we could crank out like 40 to 50 bikes a day. And then if we busted down this one wall and then put some more build stations over in these areas over here, and we made it more of like an assembly line type of situation, we could crank out like 75 to 80 bikes. So yeah, I forgot what that whole sort of manufacturing concept is called, where you could take one confined space, and based on how you configure it, you can either boost your output or reduce it with the same amount of space. But these are all like fourth industrial based concepts too, right? Space utilization, thing like vertical gardens, for example. So that means growing in vertical space to utilize all the space above your head instead of just growing on the ground. So.
Well, yeah, this is
Butterlade, man. Wait. You know what? I noticed she was using a welding machine. How are they doing that with no electricity?
Oh, water. How do they bake?
I mean, is that a fake microphone that she's holding, or
But the implementation, I'm going to always say this. The implementation of, based on this channel, I got ideas on blockchain, and I've gotten ways to implement it in ways I couldn't even imagine. So this channel is vital in terms of learning new things. When I came to the channel, I only knew about AI and machine learning. But with blockchain, I saw the importance of it, and I started learning it. I'm still learning it. I'm not an expert in it at all. But what I've seen is, while learning it, is the application is endless. I mean, the application, I've seen a lot of application of blockchain. And I've seen a lot, and because I knew data science, I knew how, and I know now how important and vital blockchain is. For instance, right now, with the vaping industry, the problem with the vaping industry could have just been solved with good quality control with the introduction of blockchain. And that needed to be implemented in the cannabis industry. If you have good quality control based using blockchain to control the information about your product, you basically, at that point, you eliminate any question of quality of your product or contamination. So with blockchain, the vaping industry wouldn't be facing this kind of problem if they implemented it as soon as possible.
Yeah, there's so much stuff that's out there that people are kind of mixing up and inhaling, and I don't really know how they're really tracking and tracing.
There's no tracking or tracing, no problem. But with blockchain, you can actually see that data and capture it, and it's unchanging. At that point, you have good quality control at that point. And at that point, you can know what is contaminated or not.
Yeah, every batch of product has, you know, a QR code, you know, and you scan it, and then it's going to give you all of the records on it. But those records that you're accessing are on a blockchain.
Yeah, on the
You know,
blockchain, and it can be manipulated. So that should be you. So that alone is the greatest quality control, and that alone can even eliminate
right,
the black market.
right,
So
exactly, yeah.
so what I learned just from this channel on how to use blockchain has basically impacted what I'm going to be doing in a long, long while.
Shout out, man. Thank you, man. That's dope.
Yeah, I hope you go to the blockchain conference in Atlanta, or the other one coming up in Arizona.
I might go. Yeah, the one probably I'll go to the one in
How
Arizona.
about Arizona? Yeah, because you right there.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, this report is pretty scathing against Black people. This idea that you can just hold out, you know, for a few more years. You know, if I just hold on, I could just,
Hold on to what?
I don't know. People have these very faithful beliefs that they think that if we just hold out, you know, that the jobs will come back to us. And it's like, no, those jobs
Jesus.
are not coming back.
Wow.
The jobs are not coming back. That's what that's what the report is saying. It's a damning report. We also got the 2019 to 24 report of fourth industrialization. And what it's basically saying is that that's the time period that they're going to track, you know, for maturation.
Right.
The state of things, you know, 5G, augmented reality, virtual reality.
This whole decade is rollout, basically.
Mhm.
Right. That's what this decade is going to signify, folks. Rollout.
Yeah, it's easy to roll out blockchain because you're just putting up a few lines of code, but what happens when you have to implement 5G and the IoT sparks and the edge computing, cloud computing? That becomes a lot.
That's the next level. That's 20 what? That's like late 2020s, mid to late 2020s in 2020 in 2030 onward.
No, the cloud is already here. But
No, cloud is here. I'm saying, but like a lot of this stuff is predicated on 5G, right? So that's going to take what now till what, maybe 2020. When did they say 5G would be a legit, like from east to west here in the States? Was it 2023?
that's a rough estimate. I mean, you imagine that the conflict with Huawei doesn't allow that, right? So
Okay.
you think about Germany or even Europe for that matter, you know, their 5G rollout is going to be significantly faster because they're not playing by the same rules that the United States is. And so what I'm saying here is that 5G rollout here won't take place for another 10 years fully, right? Right? So your major city hubs will be implemented. Your anywhere there's multiple team franchises, football, basketball, baseball, those areas will be taken care of because the business owners will set the priority for that. The stakeholders will set the priority for that. But in areas that have impoverishment, you know, they'll still be riding.
That's gonna largely be reliant upon government funding, right? Part of infrastructure grants and shit like that to get that type of work done. But no, you're absolutely right. Like the major centers, they're gonna have that shit done. That's gonna be done, and it's not gonna take a long time to do that. But just going by off of that, if you said a solid 10 years to fully roll out 5G, then yeah, I would say that.
Yeah, because 5G is not the same as regular 4G, right? You have these multiple access points that need to be set up, low power ones and the high power ones. All right, 4G, you just set up a tower in strategic locations and you were good. Right? Now with 5G, you have to set it up in strategic format so that.
And you got to have those little booster, you know, those little signal boosters, like they all got to be in close proximity.
Yeah, the microcells, right? So that needs to be set up in strategic locations because the further you get away from those sort of 600 megahertz 5G micro towers, microcells, the more service disruption you're going to have. And so we saw with Marquise Brownlee on his channel, he went 300 feet away from the
Right.
5G.
It dropped.
Performance just dropped significantly. So that stuff takes time to roll out. But
Right.
that's where a lot of your network engineers, that's where those guys are going to come from. You know, the same guys who were rolling out, Verizon Fios, some years ago, are going to be tapped on again to start rolling out that 5G. So,
dude, even those guys who were installing Dish.
Yeah, those are all the same guys, telecommunications.
Yeah, same guys.
So
any of you guys that are listening out there, if you did contract work with Dish or I don't know what the other one is, but whoever the case, if you did that kind of work, if you were a cable guy, this is the type of stuff we're talking about when we talk about upskilling. Because if you did that, okay, now you're a 5D or 5G network service tech. It's the same thing, but you're doing it in a different environment. But it requires upskilling because it is different equipment. It's similar. It's just newer equipment. It does different things. It's going to require you to know different things about it, how to maintenance it, diagnose it. But it's not nothing that you're unfamiliar with.
Right. Make sure you all check out the the document description of the video. I think we've pretty much covered everything here for tonight. Like, share the video as possible as well. We just got a third dislike. Find that to be interesting. Yeah, Space Cowboy, to answer your question, yes. Let me see. Nobody's trying to get on. All right.